When Rome fell, it didn't happen with a bang, it happened with a whimper. We have this Hollywood idea that the barbarians just showed up one day, kicked down the gates, and burned the city. That is not what happened. By the time the Visigoths sacked Rome in 4 or 10 AD, the gates were already open. The guards had left. The treasury was empty. The spirit of the people was broken. The greatest empire in human history didn't die from murder. It died from suicide. It died from a slow, agonizing rot that started 50 years before the first fire was lit. Historians call this the crisis of the 3rd century. It was a period of hyperinflation, political chaos, military overreach, and the total destruction of the middle class. Does that sound familiar? Look around you. Look at your grocery bill. Look at the national debt. Look at the paralyzed political system. Look at the riots. The mainstream media tells you these are isolated incidents. They tell you it's transitory. They tell you it's just a rough patch. They are lying. These are not random events. They are markers on a timeline. We are not becoming Rome. We are repeating their exact final 50 years, step for step. The math is identical. The corruption is identical. The end result will be identical. The American empire has entered the terminal phase. Here are the 7 signs that prove the cycle is locked in. Sign number 1, the destruction of money. This is always the first domino. In Rome, the currency was the denarius. It was a silver coin, the envy of the world. It was 98% pure silver. If you held a denarius, you held wealth. But emperors are expensive. Wars are expensive. Buying the loyalty of the Praetorian Guard is expensive. So, Nero began to cheat. He lowered the silver content to 90%. Then Marcus Aurelius lowered it to 75%. By the time of Gallienus, the denarius was 5% silver. It was a copper coin washed in a thin layer of silver that rubbed off in your hand. They didn't call it quantitative easing. They called it clipping the coin. But the mechanism is exactly the same. They diluted the supply to pay for the state's successes. Now, look at the US dollar. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. Since that day, the US dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power. We have gone from a gold-backed currency to a faith-backed currency to a digital ledger entry backed by nothing but $35 trillion in debt. When the Roman people realized their money was trash, they stopped producing. They stopped saving. They just consumed. Why work for a coin that buys less tomorrow than it does today? We are seeing the exact same psychological shift today. YOLO spending, the death of savings, the desperate gamble on meme stocks and crypto. It is the behavior of a population that knows, subconsciously, that their money is dying. Sign number 2, military overreach. Rome had a problem. The more land they conquered, the more borders they had to defend. They stretched from Scotland to Syria. To defend this perimeter, they needed more legions, but the Roman citizens were too fat, too lazy, or too dead to fight. So, Rome started hiring foederati, mercenaries, barbarians paid to fight other barbarians. At the end, the Roman army wasn't Roman, it was a payroll. The United States maintains 750 military bases in 80 countries. We are protecting shipping lanes in the Red Sea. We are funding wars in Eastern Europe. We are posturing in the South China Sea. The cost of this global hegemony is astronomical. The US defense budget is nearly $1 trillion a year, more than the next 10 nations combined. But here is the catch. In the early days of empire, war was profitable. You conquered a territory, you stole their gold, you enslaved their people. The war paid for itself. Today, war is a liability. We spend billions to blow up sand in the Middle East, and we get nothing in return but debt and veterans with PTSD. This is the diminishing return on complexity. The cost of maintaining the empire now exceeds the value of the empire. When that line crosses, the collapse isn't a possibility, it is a mathematical certainty. Sign number 3, the distraction. The poet Juvenal wrote, "Two things only the people anxiously desire, bread and circuses." When the Roman economy began to fail, the emperors were terrified of the mob. A hungry mob is a dangerous mob. So they created the cura annone, the grain dole. Free wheat for the citizens of Rome. At its peak, 200,000 Romans were receiving free food from the state, but food wasn't enough. They needed to be distracted. So they built the Colosseum. They staged gladiator games that lasted for 100 days. They gave the people blood and spectacle so they wouldn't notice the empire was burning down around them. Fast forward to 2024. What was the stimulus check? It was the cura annoni. It was the grain dole, the government paying people to stay home and not riot, and the circuses. Look at your phone. TikTok, Netflix, the Super Bowl, the endless dopamine-fueled news cycle designed to keep you angry at your neighbor instead of the system. We are drowning in entertainment while the foundation rots. The metaverse is just the digital Colosseum. It is a cage for your mind designed to keep you docile while they loot the treasury. Sign number 4. The Latifundia. In the Roman Republic, the backbone of the state was the small farmer, the independent landowner. He fought in the wars, he worked his land, he had a stake in the future. But as the currency collapsed and taxes rose, the small farmers were crushed. They couldn't compete with the massive slave-run estates owned by the ultra-wealthy senators. These estates were called Latifundia. The small farmers sold their land to the rich and moved to the city to live on the grain dole. The middle class vanished. You were either an elite or you were a prole. Look at the housing market in America today. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Mega corporations buying up single-family homes by the thousands. They are turning a nation of homeowners into a nation of renters. Small businesses were decimated by the lockdowns, while Amazon and Walmart doubled their profits. We are seeing the neo-feudalization of the economy. The wealth gap in the US is now wider than it was in Rome before the fall. The American dream was the Roman farmer. And just like him, the American middle class is being liquidated to feed the asset bubbles of the 1%. Sign number 5. The Edict on Maximum Prices. In 301 AD, Emperor Diocletian tried to stop inflation, but he didn't stop printing money. Instead, he issued a law, the Edict on Maximum Prices. He set strict price controls on everything: wheat, beer, shoes, labor. He threatened death to anyone who sold above the fixed price. Did it work? Of course not. Goods disappeared from the shelves, merchants stopped selling, a massive black market emerged, the economy ground to a halt because the government tried to legislate reality. We are watching this happen in real time. Rent control, price gouging laws, proposals for federal caps on food prices, the war on energy production. The bureaucracy has become a parasite that is killing the host. In Rome, it eventually became hereditary. If your father was a baker, you had to be a baker. You were forbidden from leaving your post. They locked the economy in place to try and stop the bleeding. We are seeing the soft version of this. ESG scores, social credit, digital IDs. The system is trying to clamp down on free trade because free trade exposes their failure. Sign number 6. The war within. Before Rome fell to the barbarians, it fell to itself. The political system became so toxic that compromise was impossible. It wasn't about governing anymore, it was about destroying your opponent. You had the optimates, the traditionalists, versus the populares, the populists. The Gracchi brothers tried to reform the land laws to help the poor, and the Senate beat them to death with chairs in the middle of the forum. Violence became the primary language of politics. Look at the United States. The polarization is total. The left and the right are not just disagreeing on policy. They are living in different realities. They view each other not as opponents, but as existential threats. When the pie is growing, everyone can get along. When the pie is shrinking, when the debt burden becomes unbearable, politics becomes a zero-sum game. If I eat, you starve. This internal division is the immune system failing. A united Rome could have repelled the Goths. A divided Rome opened the gates. Sign number 7. The loss of fear. For centuries, Rome didn't need to fight. The mere reputation of Rome was enough. The Pax Romana. But eventually, the enemies tested the waters. They poked, they prodded, and they realized something terrifying. The giant was weak. The Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD was the turning point. The Goths annihilated a Roman army. They killed the Emperor Valens. The shockwave went around the world. Rome can be beaten. Once that psychological barrier broke, It was open season. We are seeing this right now. The catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, the inability to deter Russia in Ukraine, the rising aggression of China, the BRICS alliance openly challenging the US dollar. The world no longer fears the United States. They see a nation divided, a military focused on diversity equity rather than lethality, and an economy built on a mountain of IOUs. Saudi Arabia is refusing to renew the petrodollar deal. China is dumping treasuries. The sharks smell blood in the water. They aren't attacking because they are strong. They are attacking because we are weak. The year 476 AD is just a date in a book. For the people living through it, there was no single day where the world ended. The lights just got dimmer. The roads got worse. The bandits got bolder. The money bought less. The fall of Rome was a transition from a centralized order to decentralized chaos. It was the Dark Ages. We are heading for a new Dark Age, a digital Dark Age. The system is terminal. You cannot fix a debt crisis with more debt. You cannot fix a productivity crisis with more bureaucracy. You cannot fix a cultural rot with more distractions. The architects know this. That is why they are buying bunkers in New Zealand. That is why they are buying gold. They are preparing for the transition. Are you? Do not bank on the empire saving you. The empire is the one stealing from you to keep the lights on for one more day. Become a citizen of your own household. Build your own supply chain. Hold your own assets. The pattern is complete. The cycle is closing. Rome fell, and we are next.